From that moment, my brother and sister-in-law made their intentions clear. We'll handle the household ourselves. You should start looking for a new place to live. To my shock, my mother sided with them, treating me as though I were an obstacle rather than a member of the family. Did they even realize who had been paying the bills all this time? Their disregard cut deeper than I had expected. Inwardly, I made a silent vow to take control of my situation. My name is Kinsley, a 30-year-old woman who, after college, returned to live with my parents. I had initially set out into the corporate world, determined to carve my own path, but the pressures of that environment overwhelmed me, leading to my decision to come back home. While unemployed, I began exploring work-from-home opportunities. Drawing on my scientific background, I ventured into freelance engineering. Starting small, the income was modest at first, but the independence it offered was invaluable. Unlike traditional office jobs, I could earn a respectable living without enduring endless social interactions. As I gained confidence, both my workload and income grew. Within a year, I was earning as much as a full-time corporate employee. Yet, despite my accomplishments, my parents, particularly my mother, struggled to understand my work-from-home lifestyle. My father understood and supported me, but my mother clung to traditional ideas about real work. She questioned my choices at every turn. "How long are you planning to stay at home?" she asked, her tone filled with skepticism. I showed her proof of my work, client emails, payment receipts, and contracts, but she remained unconvinced. To her, it all seemed too unconventional, possibly even shady. "Isn't this just some kind of scam? Or a cult, maybe?" she muttered under her breath. Her doubt stung, but I knew I needed to stay focused. At the time, moving out wasn't financially viable, my savings weren't yet sufficient, and my father's health had started to decline. His mobility issues and chronic pain meant he required care, though he reassured me with, "My pension will cover everything." I could see the strain on his face. Complicating matters, my mother's spending habits made it unlikely they could manage on his pension alone. My father had always supported me, through college and during my struggles with mental health, so I felt it was my turn to give back. "Don't worry, Dad," I told him, "I'll take care of the family." He seemed doubtful. "Are you sure your income is enough for that?" I showed him my growing earnings, and for the first time, he seemed to recognize how stable my freelance career had become. With his trust, I stepped up to help with household expenses, medical bills, and any other financial needs. Each month, I transferred a significant amount into his account. To manage my mother's spending, I set up a new credit card system. She would use a supplementary card tied to a main account I monitored. My father, ever the frugal one, cautioned her to spend wisely. But instead of gratitude, my mother's resentment grew. "Wouldn't it make more sense for Kinsley to leave the house?" she argued. I reminded her of my contributions, pointing out how challenging it would be for them without my support. Even then, her skepticism lingered. It took my father's firm intervention to convince her to let me stay. Though reluctant, she finally agreed, but I knew I still had a long way to go to prove myself in her eyes. Continuing to juggle my work and household responsibilities, I noticed my mother's increasing tendency to take my efforts for granted. Her criticisms became more frequent and sharper. "Can't you finish your chores faster?" she'd often demand. I tried explaining the difficulty of balancing my freelance work and household tasks, but my words fell on deaf ears. To her, my work seemed less legitimate, no matter how much I contributed. The tension between us became undeniable, and our relationship felt more strained than ever. Thankfully, my father continued to be a source of support. He understood my efforts and often reassured me during difficult moments. For a year, this strained dynamic persisted. Despite the emotional toll, I remained committed to my responsibilities. Then, my father's health took a sudden turn for the worse, requiring him to be hospitalized. I visited him daily, sharing moments of concern and reassurance. Despite his own struggles, he found the strength to acknowledge mine. "I know it's not easy dealing with your mother," he said one afternoon, his voice tired but kind, "but thank you for everything you do for us." Those words stayed with me, giving me the resolve to persevere, even as my relationship with my mother deteriorated further. At times, I felt suffocated by her expectations and criticisms. Yet, I reminded myself of her sacrifices during my student years and clung to that as motivation to keep supporting her. However, everything changed the day my brother Wesley and his wife Aaliyah moved in unexpectedly. Their arrival felt abrupt, almost orchestrated. Wesley explained their decision with practiced calm. "We've decided to move in so we can ease the burden on you." His words caught me off guard. What burden? I wondered. My mother's reaction was equally telling. She avoided my gaze, her face a mix of relief and something else I couldn't quite place. As the day unfolded, the underlying message became clearer. My mother, clearly pleased by their arrival, remarked, "Now, with Wesley and Aaliyah here, you can contribute even more to the household." I couldn't shake the suspicion that their presence was less about supporting me and more about shifting the dynamics of the house. Wesley, a graduate of a prestigious university with a high-paying job, certainly didn't need my help, and yet, I couldn't help but question whether they would manage without my steady contributions. Living with Wesley and Aaliyah brought new challenges. The household dynamics shifted rapidly, and I soon found myself in a more demanding environment than before. "Wake up, Kinsley, make breakfast." Aaliyah's voice cut through the early morning silence as she banged on my door. Already awake and immersed in my work, I sighed, bracing myself for what was quickly becoming my new normal. I replied calmly, "I'm already up and working." But my words did little to dissuade Aaliyah. "Get on with it and make breakfast," she demanded, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Reluctantly, I set aside my work and joined them in the kitchen. In our family, mornings were usually a relaxed affair, with each person preparing their own breakfast at their leisure. This new expectation of communal breakfast preparation, despite my mother and Aaliyah both being present, felt intrusive. Traditionally, I assumed Aaliyah might handle breakfast for her husband, but she insisted on my involvement. Begrudgingly, I complied. I prepared a plate featuring soft scrambled eggs, crisp lettuce salad, freshly buttered toast, and a plump sausage, thinking it would meet their standards. Instead, my effort was met with disdain. "Is this all you made? This isn't enough," they complained. Annoyed, I shot back, "You don't have to eat it." The room went silent for a moment before Aaliyah snapped. "Who do you think you are?" Wesley chimed in mockingly. "Yeah, what kind of attitude is that? Just who do you think you are?" Trying to stay calm, I explained, "I have work commitments. I can't spend all morning in the kitchen." But my reasoning was dismissed outright. "What kind of work is that? Are you out of your mind?" Wesley retorted. Frustrated by their lack of respect and the disruption to my work, I grabbed my laptop, ignored their protests, and left the house. As I walked away, I heard Wesley's voice trailing behind me. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded. I headed straight to my father's hospital room, seeking solace in his presence. When I entered, his face lit up in surprise. "Kinsley, what's wrong? You look upset," he said, his concern evident. "I had a huge argument with Wesley and the others," I admitted, feeling the weight of the confrontation. His brow furrowed. "I didn't realize things had gotten so bad." "I'm sorry, Kinsley, don't worry about them. You have the right to live your life the way you want." "But what about Mom?" I asked hesitantly. "Wouldn't she feel more comfortable with Wesley at home?" He reached out and placed a reassuring hand on mine. "You don't need to stay where you're not wanted or respected. All I want is for you to be happy. Do what's best for you." Encouraged by his words, I resolved to leave. When I returned home that evening, the atmosphere was tense. My mother, Wesley, and Aaliyah sat together, their expressions grim, as though waiting for me. Wesley was the first to speak, his tone accusatory. "Why weren't you around today? I had to take the day off because of you." I blinked, incredulous. Take the day off? It seemed remarkably convenient how easily he could step away from work. The confrontation escalated, with Wesley eventually declaring, "You need to leave. From now on, the three of us will live here. If you don't want to stay, then go. We don't need you anymore." His words stung. "Why, what did I do?" I asked, stunned. But my protests fell on deaf ears. Aaliyah and Wesley doubled down, insisting I was no longer needed. Even my mother, silent at first, finally spoke. "Maybe it's time you moved on," she said, her voice cold. It was as though none of my contributions to the household or finances mattered to them. They had decided I was an inconvenience. Anger bubbled inside me as I realized how ungrateful they were. I made a decision. That night, I transferred the funds from the credit card my mother used daily into a separate account under my control. I knew it would be a rude awakening when she found her card declined. Next, I moved the remaining money from my father's account, funds critical for the family's financial stability, into a secure account solely for his medical expenses. If they didn't value my presence, they would soon feel the absence of my financial support. I made the changes to the family finances quietly, ensuring my mother remained unaware. This effectively shifted the financial burden onto my brother and his wife. While I wasn't privy to the specifics of Wesley's income, I knew this would be a heavy weight for them to bear. After finalizing these adjustments, I packed my belongings and made my announcement. "I'm leaving." The room fell silent, and I noticed the stunned expressions on their faces. It was clear they hadn't anticipated such a decisive move. Yet, beneath their shock, there was an unmistakable flicker of satisfaction. They were pleased to see me go. As I stood by the door, they seized the moment to belittle me. "Finally, we've never dealt with someone as difficult as you. You're not planning to come back, are you?" Wesley sneered. "Of course not," I replied firmly. Then, with a final glance, I added, "And don't contact me." Their smug smiles followed me out, but I couldn't help but wonder how long it would take for reality to sink in once I was truly gone. Settling into a new home in a peaceful neighborhood, I felt a sense of liberation. Free from the toxic environment, I embraced my independence and poured my energy into my work. The tranquility of my new surroundings allowed me to thrive, and for a while, life was blissfully quiet. Then, as expected, the peace was interrupted by a call from Wesley. "I told you not to contact me. What's wrong?" I answered sharply, not bothering to hide my irritation. His voice was filled with urgency. "Kinsley, what did you do with the family finances? We can't manage anything anymore." I stayed calm and replied, I told you countless times about the work I did to support the household, but none of you believed me. I've been managing everything to keep things afloat. He hesitated before admitting, Mom said a lot of things, and I didn't understand the situation. I cut him off. It doesn't matter now. I'm not there anymore. You'll have to figure it out on your own. A few days later, Wesley called again. This time, his tone was desperate. Kinsley, I need money, please. Perplexed, I asked, are you serious? Don't you work for a big company? There was a long pause before he confessed. I got fired. I made a major mistake at work. His admission left me speechless. It became clear that he had returned to our parents' house assuming the finances were secure, perhaps relying on our father's pension or, unknowingly, my contributions. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Soon after, my mother and Aaliyah joined in pleading for help. My mother even revealed, your father refuses to contribute to the household anymore. I took a deep breath and responded firmly, I've done more than enough for all of you. It's time you took responsibility for yourselves. With that, I severed communication. In the aftermath, my father, tired of the tension, consulted a lawyer and chose to live a quieter life in a separate home. I visited him regularly, cherishing the peaceful moments we shared. Meanwhile, updates trickled in from a friend about my brother's struggles. He had moved into a small apartment and was living frugally. My mother, unaccustomed to working outside the home, found the sudden change challenging. Wesley struggled in a workplace dominated by younger colleagues, and the stress eventually drove Aaliyah to leave him. Left with just each other, my mother and brother faced the harsh reality of their choices. Despite their struggles, my mother's old habits of overspending and accumulating debt persisted, and Wesley's circumstances remained grim. Still, I recognized my limits. I couldn't continue to shoulder their burdens. Focusing on my own goals, I worked diligently in my comfortable living space, steadily building my future. With renewed clarity and purpose, I began exploring new ventures and cherished every moment spent with my father, his cheerful presence a reminder of what truly mattered.